It is my pleasure to welcome artist Shushana Rucker. Welcome.
Thank you.
You are bringing a new exhibit to our gallery, Connections and Observation. You're from Philadelphia area, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I grew up in a little town called Wayne, and I have 11 siblings. So that was kind of unusual for Pennsylvania in general. And my dad taught at an all-boys military school. And so I spent a lot of time as a kid making art in his studio because I was homeschooled. Actually, me and all of my siblings were homeschooled.
Wow.
So I spent a ton of time making art growing up. And my dad's an artist, and I went to the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts for undergrad, and then I went to the University of Delaware for graduate school to get my MFA. And I'm married and have 2 kids.
Yeah, wonderful. And I know your father is an artist, and you have other siblings who also an artist. When did you start thinking, the art is something I want to do? How did that start?
So, as I mentioned before, I spent a lot of time painting and drawing and making prints in my dad's studio at the school he taught at. And I didn't really think of it seriously as a profession because I thought of my dad as being a teacher. He was an artist, but he was an art teacher primarily. And I kind of thought he had a lot of struggles with galleries and the business end of art. And so I didn't really think I wanted to be an artist. I liked making art, but I thought, oh, I'm going to be a chef or something like that. And so I kind of decided maybe when I was in my mid to late teens, my dad kind of really, really encouraged me. Of all my siblings, a few of us, he really pushed in that direction.
Yeah.
And so...
And you were one of them.
Yeah, I was one of them. And so he encouraged me to take some classes at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts, some kind of continuing education classes that were in the evening and weekends. And so I did that, saved up my babysitting money, and went to, when I was about 15 and 16, I took classes there. And I had a teacher there who just kept telling me I needed to apply. And, excuse me. And so I thought, oh, maybe I'll apply.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny, but that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah. When I first saw your paintings, I was just so taken by this almost too honest. Your painting is beautiful. Somehow you make this scene of honest back alley of city with the graffitis, and you're not afraid to put power poles or power lines and some utilitarian structures, but yet you make it so beautiful. How did you start painting these cityscapes or urban scenes?
That's a great question. I think a lot of people wonder that. Where I grew up wasn't in the city. I'm sorry. I grew up in the suburbs, and it was a really beautiful suburban area with lots of trees, and it's one of the wealthier areas of Pennsylvania because my dad taught at a private school, so we lived on campus there, and it was really pretty and picturesque. So when I started school, I was living with my parents for a year and a half, and then I moved into the city. And so when I first started at the academy, I really wanted to be a portrait artist, and I wanted to do landscapes. That was kind of my thing, but primarily portraits. And then I moved into the city, and I immediately felt this shift in my mood. And it was a very different atmosphere than the atmosphere I grew up in. And so it kind of made me think I should be responding to this. And there's a scripture in Ecclesiastes that really struck me during this time. It's, I think, chapter 1, verse 18, and I'm paraphrasing, but essentially says that in much wisdom is much sorrow. And I kind of took that to mean during this time in my life, here I am in this city center with all these, innovations, and we have electricity, and we have all these wonderful things, but people aren't any happier. And so,
Interesting.
what does that say about our current landscape?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I started off with this.
And then you take that somewhat stark contrast of the way where you grew up to this new environment, but you make it so beautiful. Your paintings are wonderful.
Well, some people think they're ugly, but I try to make them interesting to look at.
Sure.
And I've had people come up to me in galleries and say, "Why are you painting such depressing art?"
I don't know if I ever felt depressing. Maybe you're communicating almost a social commentary of, not so a proud side of city. But again, your painting is very refreshing and beautiful. And I'm excited to show the exhibit to the viewers.
I'm excited too.
Yeah. So these are your signature paintings, cityscapes, and a lot of them are from Philadelphia area, right?
Yes.
Have you painted anything around here, which is Rexburg area?
I have probably 30% of the stuff that's going to be in the show.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Is stuff from around here. Actually, the painting that's in the background behind you, I probably shouldn't point it out, but that's the house I moved into in Philadelphia when I first lived in Philadelphia. So that's kind of
wonderful.
some context for you.
I have to give it a second look now.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So besides painting these cityscapes, what else inspires you?
So my dad, he's an artist, and one of the things he's really, really amazing at painting. He's primarily a religious and landscape artist, but one thing that he does that is really inspiring to me is he paints these wonderful clouds. And so I've always really aspired to paint like beautiful clouds like he does. I can't, but. And then another thing that I really inspires me with my work is when I was at the academy, I studied printmaking primarily, and so that really informs my painting. I still make prints, but I do a lot of painting right now. Yeah. But what I learned about printmaking, really, the mark and everything really inspires my painting.
Yeah. That's kind of interesting now that you're saying about printmaking, because on almost every painting that I see, you have that printmaking quality, and maybe perhaps it's a precise line, or there's a wide, soft line versus a stark, thin lines. Those are very much like ink quality almost. Yeah. That's wonderful. Maybe that's why I'm so drawn to it. It's beautiful. When you start working on artwork, do you ever get stuck in the middle? You just, do you get stuck?
Oh, definitely, all the time.
What do you do?
So I usually will take the piece and set it aside, like put it in a closet where I can't see it anymore, because usually I think this is the most hideous thing anyone's ever painted.
Yeah.
And so I just put it away and forget about it. And then sometimes I'll just feel the urge to go back to it. And I'll go back to it, and then sometimes it turns out great. Sometimes it just is never meant to be. It'll never come to fruition. And so I sand it down and paint over it. Yeah.
Okay.
But I think that's an important part of making art, is making mistakes and then learning from them.
Yeah. You were talking about cloud earlier, about your father painting wonderful clouds. Clouds intimidate me.
Yeah.
I do a lot of landscape painting, but clouds really intimidate me. And sometimes I have to say the rest paintings are okay to go, but the clouds sometimes ruin my painting. And I have to say, a couple of times I had to slash them down and just destroy it. But I think what you say, that when you said when we have mistakes or failure, and then that's our stepping stool for progress, don't you think?
Oh yes, and it really works with my ideas too. Like the idea that things aren't perfect, and I don't really hold to that idea that I have to have perfection in my paintings. necessarily. So.
Right. And, and I think maybe because of that attitude, you have this cityscape of not so perfect, let's say a little bit of a crack on the beautiful red brick walls, but then that's kind of how it is, and you take it with the attitude, and it's the world is a little more beautiful to look at. Don't you think?
Oh yeah, for sure. The contrast between, and that's one of the things that I write about in my artist statement. One of the important things for me is the contrast between things that are beautiful and things that are ugly. That's what makes things that are beautiful more beautiful. And that's,
That's profound.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Well, and I know you're teaching classes here at the university. When you see these young students who are starting out and they are just not sure, what advice do you have?
Work hard and work smart. And the reason I say that is because when I was in school, I started at the academy when I was 17, so I was young. And I had had a lot of people tell me I was talented. Mm-hmm. And as I went through my time there, I continuously had people telling me I was talented. Mm-hmm. And after a certain amount of hearing that, you start to think, well, I'm talented. I don't have to work hard. Oh. And it took me a while to kind of switch back to that. Oh, I really do have to work hard if I want to make anything of myself. So that's the work hard. And work smart is choose opportunities that are going to help you further your career and never say no to someone when they offer you an opportunity.
Yeah. For college students, I don't know what kind of opportunity that it'll come before them, but either you're talented or not so, you definitely do need to work hard. You have to produce a lot to make, a good art. Is there something that you wish you've done better in college?
Yeah, I wish I hadn't been so lazy. I mean, like really.
I highly doubt you were, but
I don't. Well, I look back and compared to the way I am now, I feel like I was a little bit lazy or laissez-faire. Like I didn't really focus as hard as I could have because I felt like my skill or my talent would push me through. Like I didn't, and it didn't help much that I got accepted into a bunch of graduate schools and I got a full tuition plus stipend when I went to University of Delaware
you were flying high.
I got a scholarship to travel in Europe between my summer of the end of undergrad and graduate school. It was just kind of like I was at this point, and then I hit graduate school and I was there for like a month and I'm like, ooh, I need to work a lot harder than I'm working.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, end result is beautiful.
Thank you.
I know you have a lot of followers, and you have many good galleries that showing your work. And I know was it last year, a couple of years ago, when I went to your gallery in Philadelphia, the show looked great, and there were a lot of visitors. So it worked out at the end.
Yes, yeah.
So your exhibit is called Connection and Observation. What do you wish for your viewers to walk away with when they come to see the exhibit?
So Rudolf Arnheim, he's a famous visual theorist. Mm-hmm. He said that unless the stuff of the senses remain present, the mind has nothing to think with. And so this idea that we collect sensory data, and that's what creates our thoughts. That's really important for me. So when we look at things, it's important to kind of include all of the nitty-gritty, at least in my opinion, of daily life and of, like you said, the crack in the wall or whatever, the power lines. They're there. They're evidence of humans. They're evidence of a connection that we share as human beings. There's also this kind of disconnect that we have because of that technology. So those are, and there's kind of like a sadness to that. So those are the kind of the things that I really hope that people gather from it. But people are going to see what they want to see. So that's part of it.
And I think that's what I love about your paintings, because it helps me to embrace that what is not so beautiful. But through your painting, it all of a sudden becomes beautiful, and it's a little more significant meaning to it. So the mundane city, one side that I would usually just drive by or walk by, then I look at one more time and just find a beauty in it. And I think that's what makes our life a little more livable with pleasure rather than vice versa.
Yeah.
Okay. The show looks wonderful, and thank you for showing your artwork with us.
Well, thanks for having me.